Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. We have got beautiful springtime bass fishing conditions today. We are going to go out. We've got pre-spawners. We're going out today looking for schooling fish. Now, not fish that are up busting, but schools of bass that are in pre-spawn that are moving up and staging. We've got a variety of baits: jerk baits, A-rigs, crank baits, swim baits. We're going to see if we can get these fish to react. So come along, let's go fishing. Think he wanted that A-rig? He's got a mouth full of hooks. Completely choked the most natural bait on the rig, despite having about 18 inches of visibility in the water. You gotta remember with these fish, even when you have weird water clarity, go ahead and spot lock us here. Even when you have weird water clarity, in this case, we've had true muddy water for a couple of months. So 18 inches of viz is actually pretty clear to a fish that's been in chocolate milk. So they're targeting a natural colored bait in what would normally on this lake be murky water. Normally we'd have 4 to 8 feet of visibility. They'd get into 18 inches of viz. You'd need a react of a bold, a bright color, but not when it's coming the other direction and coming out of being chocolate milk. So don't be afraid to try those more natural colors. Now, the biggest thing that we're doing today, guys, is we are looking for schoolers. The reason why is that springtime is one of the rare times where you can get into bass that are schooling hard. Huge, vast groups of bass all doing the same thing. See, it takes the same amount of effort to get one bass to bite as it does to get an entire school to bite. So in the pre-spawn, our goal is to find a school and to fire them up. That's why we have a bunch of reactive baits laying on deck that we can switch between to try and keep a school fired up once we find them. So we're just gonna work our way around here, try and locate a school, and if we do, see if we can capitalize and keep those fish going, maybe get a big one out of the mix. Come along. I haven't taken us off spot lock yet. Looks like we're actually sitting on a group of fish right where I caught that one out of 8-9 feet of water. So I'm actually gonna back up into the shallows here. We'll cast out deep, see if we can get another one. Twitch that A-rig to get it started just to straighten out my baits, then medium retrieve. Once in a while throw in 2 twitches to look like the baits are fleeing. Got him. Now the key to schooling bass is to keep them fired up. That was pretty fun catching another one right off the bat. I don't know if these fish are stable or if they're just moving through here. So I'm fan casting both directions, see if I can find them again. If not, we'll keep moving, look for a bigger group. find it interesting. That one too, I didn't watch on the second one, but that one just ate that same color again. Very interesting. These fish have completely vanished off the graph. Either I caught enough of them to break up the school, or the school kept moving. But either way, that means we need to keep moving. I didn't bring any deep enough diving jerk baits to reach these outer fish in that 7 to 10 foot zone. I was expecting them to be up a little bit shallower, but we'll continue to probe shallow, maybe mix in some of these other baits as well. I think I probably could have gotten bit on an underspin out of that group of fish, but I was still firing trying to locate them, and then all of a sudden they were shut down. All right, guys, we were racing a storm front coming in. I made 3 or 4 more stops, just wasn't finding the right fish, so I went ahead and wrapped it up. But the important part of this video wasn't even the fish catches. I've got some information for you. Really what we're doing today is we're tying together the whole rest of the spring. We started clear back in January talking about, advanced ways to rig the A-rig. Then we started talking jerk baits. We've talked underspins. We've talked swim baits. All of that was headed somewhere. We've talked to you about springtime bass fishing, where the fish go, how they transition. Today is the day where I want to tie all of that up. Make sure that you guys understand this so that you have your best odds going forward. So hear me out. Today was about finding schools of bass and getting them fired up so you can catch more than one fish. The purpose of that is that you put the exact same amount of effort into catching a single bass. If there's a bass by itself and you're casting, you get that fish fired up and you catch him. It takes the exact same amount of time and effort to catch that single bass out of a school, which in turn triggers the entire school. And you end up with a feeding frenzy where you can catch fish after fish after fish. So why put the effort into a single bass when you can put it into a school? So we already talked about springtime, how these fish transition. They move along secondary points, key pieces of structure, ultimately headed to spawning. Well, what I haven't told you, because some of you guys are ahead, is that it essentially works in reverse after the spawn. It's more complicated than that. There's a split of fish. But some of the fish are going to step right back out. They're going to pull to the first ledge and then start working their way down secondaries, headed back out. So I don't care if you're on the front side of the spawn or you're on the back side of the spawn. It really doesn't matter, because the fish can and will be in the same places, and you can even have both groups of fish within a school. So my point is, whether you are on the very, very, very front edge of pre-spawn, whether you've got fish on beds, but you have some pre-spawners and some post-spawners, or if you're full-blown post-spawn right now, the information is the same. So here is the ticket. Right now, you should not be just going down the bank fishing. That is not what you should be doing. Are you going to catch fish? Yes. Can you have a good day? Yes. Are the odds high that you're going to catch the biggest bass of your life or the most bass that you've ever caught in one day? No. Are the odds high that you could do exactly that? Catch a monster or multiple monsters, or catch the most fish you've ever caught, or all of the above? Right now, are the odds high of doing that? Absolutely. So what you need to do is focus on areas where bass would be schooling. And don't be afraid to cover a bunch of spots. Now, you may not find them every trip, and that's all right. Obviously, you're going to catch fish. You're going to have a great time along the way. But if you can find it, if you can find that mega school of fish moving in or moving out, you are ready for the best fishing you've ever had. So what are the fish doing? We already talked about this before, but let's recap. The fish are feeding up on the front end of the spawn, or they're recovering from the spawn. Most of the country, they're still feeding up going into the spawn. We know that they're going to move down the secondary points.
You know that if there's a bunch of secondary points, they're going to prefer the points with the best cover. They're ultimately headed to spawning coves and spawning flats. So if you can find where those two things come together, those best points coming into those best flats or pockets, and then ideally, if you can find bait fish in those areas, so there's a good food source to go with it, that is where it all comes together. Now, if you can't find the food source, just focus on those key structures. I don't care if you're in a lake that's 100 miles long or if you're in a pond. We've already addressed that. This can take place over miles or this can take place in 100 yards. But the bass are going to make that spring move. The bait fish are doing the same thing. And the bass this time of year are going to move together. There will always be single fish, but there will always be schools of fish. So your goal, run the best locations possible. If you've got a series of secondary points in your lake, and there's hundreds of them, find the ones that have the best cover, and where there's several of those in a row, that's the spot you want to check. If you don't have secondary points, if you're in a pond somewhere, you want the best pieces of structure transitioning from the deep end to the shallow end. Check those structures. Sizes of the schools can vary, but remember the way this works, and the reason the school is so important, is that if you want to catch the biggest bass of your life in the spring, right before they spawn, the giant bass get into the schools with the little bass. They move together. The little ones move first. They move to spawn first, but as they're moving to get there, there's often times where they end up on a point together. Little guys move, the big ones follow. Little guys move, big ones follow. And for a minute, they're all right there together on that spot before the next transition. If you get them on that spot and you take a jerkbait, an underspin, an A-rig, a swim bait, a lipless, one of those reaction baits, and you get a little one to bite, especially that jerkbait, it is so key this time of year. If you can get a little one to bite and you get back in there and you get another one to bite, get back in there, get another one to bite. Fast forward, within that school, you've got a monster bass. A bass that is smart, that's not dumb enough to eat a little bait. If she were just sitting on a point by herself and you came by fishing, she's not going to jump up and eat that bait. But when she's in that school and these fish are running around in front of her feeding, that one gets caught. These are feeding, that one gets caught, that one gets caught. All of a sudden, she's going to get caught up. And 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 bites into that school, all of a sudden, your little males are replaced with the biggest bass you have ever seen right out of the middle of that school. She was there the entire time. These fish are making the same transitions. The females need to end up in the same place the males do. And all of a sudden, you have this giant bass on the end of the line. That's why it's so important. This is one of those times a year where you can be tactical in your approach. You can go to the lake and just go fishing and catch fish, or you can put a little more thought into it, check key locations, and all of a sudden you're going to come across a truly monster bass. That's why today is so important. The actual fishing, that's just so we can have a little bit of fun along the way. The important part is that you guys understand looking for those schooling fish, and then when you've got a fish, immediately fire back in, try to get a second. If you get a second, drop everything you're doing, try and get a third, try and get a fourth. They won't eat that bait anymore, switch. Try another bait, try to get number 5, number 6, number 7, and then all of a sudden, there's your big one. It's that easy, guys. You can do this. Get out there this spring, try to catch the biggest fish of your life. And again, you can do it on the front and back of the spawn, but they weigh more on the front side of the spawn. So if you can, do it as soon as possible. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.